So a question I've been getting a lot is how to gain weight properly, how to put on muscle as efficiently as possible. So that's what we're going to cover today, gaining muscle, what does it take, and a couple studies to kind of go over some of that. But there's a lot of good literature on it as well. Surplus study that I'm going to refer to is the effects of different energy intake following resistance training on muscle mass and body fat in bodybuilders. This was a pilot study by Ribeiro in 2019. And what they did was they had two groups. One group was in a very high energy calorie surplus, 67.5 kcals per kilogram, versus the other group, 50.1 kcals per kilogram. With the overfed group, they put on 2.4 kilograms of mass, 1.8 kilogram of fat, so a 4-to-3 ratio of lean muscle to fat put on. And then the 50.1 kcal group, the lower fed surplus group, they put on 1.2 kilograms of mass and only 0.3 kilograms of fat, so a 4-to-1 ratio. So that kind of shows you that the slower rate gain, weight of rate gain that you're looking for is going to yield the best results in a long-term approach. So something to think about. We'll go over the recommendations afterwards, but that just kind of show you that the less of a surplus that you have, the better the ratio of lean mass to actual fat that you'll be putting on. Another thing that we want to talk about is the idea of being able to recomp your body or to be able to add muscle while in a deficit. And there are a few things that you want to look at that can kind of make that a big detriment in terms of being able to put on muscle. You can do it, but it's not the most optimal way to do it, and it doesn't always work for everyone. It usually works for people that are new to lifting, people that are just starting PEDs, or people that are trying something new, like learning how to train really hard or something along those lines. But when you get into a deficit, as this study shows, acute energy deprivation affects skeletal muscle protein synthesis and associated intracellular signaling proteins in physically active adults by Pasiaskos, 2010. It shows that as soon as you start a deficit, your testosterone will go down, your cortisol goes up, your muscle protein synthesis decreases, and your muscle protein breakdown increases. So all these things point to it's going to be really hard for you to put on as much muscle as possible while in any type of deficit. And we see that all the time. If you look at a lot of case studies after bodybuilding shows, a lot of the athletes takes anywhere from 12 to 24 to sometimes even a year, 2 years to get their hormones, to get everything back in place for them to effectively start building muscle again. So that's something that you want to think about when you have the idea of recomping your body and trying to gain as much muscle as possible and trying to stay as lean as possible with a deficit. That may not be the best route to go. So another study shows nutrition recommendations for bodybuilders in the off season. This was done by Iraqi and colleagues in 2019. The recommendations were pretty much what we talked about before with the protein, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day, which roughly equates to 0.4 to 0.55 grams per kilogram per meal of protein. Looking to have a 10 to 20% increase in total calories. 20% can be for larger males, 10% can be for smaller women, because you just want a bit of a ratio like that in terms of being able to put on the most amount of muscle, minimize the fat. You can't have extremely high calories if you're a smaller person. And then right around a 0.25 to 0.5% gain in body weight per week. So that's kind of the ratio you want to think about in terms of how many calories you put in, what's the rate of weight gain. So with all that being said, the idea is how much muscle can we gain? What's the best way to go about it? What's the best approach? If you refer to this study up here, yeah, they put on more muscle mass, but they also put on a bit more fat. So you want to think in terms of if you are a naturally leaner person, or if you are new to lifting or very young, or it's your first time on PEDs, that maybe that overfeeding state would be a little bit better. And I found that anecdotally as well. People that are new to powerlifting and bodybuilding, if they're really young and they're getting into it, that's kind of the idea of when you want to put on as much muscle as possible. It's the same idea as if you get stronger your rate of gains is going to be limited. You might look for a 5-pound PR, whereas maybe when you were first starting off, you had a 100-pound PR in your total. It's going to be the same thing. You'll be able to put on a lot more muscle when you're younger and push calories really hard, and gain as much muscle as you can. As you get older, it's going to be a lot harder to do, and you're going to have a lot harder time doing that with the fat accrual. So you want to, maybe as you get older, as you're more of an elite athlete, you want to look to minimize the fat gain as much as possible, because one, you don't really want to go out of your weight class, and two, you don't want to get fat because it's going to be a lot harder on the body as a more elite level and an older athlete. So that's what you want to think about in terms of actual recommendations for how to gain the most amount of muscle possible. And this just covers diet. Obviously, training is going to be a completely different topic. That's going to require you to think about progressive overload, think about your ability to recover, think about the things that actually promote muscle protein and muscle building. And that's going to be, like I said, mechanical tension. That's going to be metabolic training. And then it's also going to be your ability to recover and train harder the next time. So those are the things you want to think about when it comes to trying to gain as much weight as possible. Some of the studies that will show you whether or not it's an effective thing to do, and then also making sure that your training and your sleep matches your ability to recover and your ability to continue to grow. So that covers gaining muscle. We've already covered a bunch of other stuff when it comes to fat loss, when it comes to timing and everything else. So I hope you guys like these videos. Hope you're learning from them, and I'll have another one within a week or two.